Welcome to a Wiser Retirement podcast. Before we get started with the episode, I want to tell you about a new ebook available on our website called Buyer Beware. Why do they keep trying to sell you that annuity? This ebook covers the various types of annuities, negatives to owning annuities, and better investment alternatives to annuities. To download this ebook, you can click the link in the episode notes or go to wiserinvestor.com and you'll find it at the bottom of the page. Now on to today's episode.
Welcome to the Wiser Retirement Podcast, where we believe the best financial advice should always be conflict-free. I'm your host, Casey Smith. Guiding you to financial freedom today is my co-host, Robert Swarthout. Hey, Robert.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Robert's the founder and CEO, portfolio manager at Teton Crypto Capital. And we do an extra episode every month on topics related to crypto. Today, we're taking a more education sidestep.
Yeah, just
and going to focus on blockchain.
Yeah, it's blockchain, is the underlying technology of all the crypto stuff we talk about. Sometimes it's referred to as distributed ledger technology, but it's Pepsi or Coke. It's all a soda. So
you remember, people still do this. They say it's in the cloud. Oh, where did you say that? Oh, I saved it in the cloud. But no one really knows what the cloud is. And I think we should start there before we go down our list of it's in the blockchain. But what does that mean? It's like, people say, hand me a Kleenex. Mm-hmm. But there's different brands of Kleenex and different boxes.
Yep. So at the very core of all this, a blockchain is purely a form of a database. You have traditional databases that you may use within a business system to store, financial data or customer data. You have more advanced database systems that you may actually use in the cloud, like an Amazon Web Services or a Google Cloud or something like that. That gets very techy very quickly there. But at the end of the day, a blockchain is just really a sequential recording of history where each block refers to the previous block and kind of goes back. And, it's uneditable. So at the end, you have a system that people can rely on, that somebody is not in the database just kind of changing some values. Say it's your bank account. Bank accounts are not yet in blockchain, but at some point they will be. And you don't want to have the bank to be able to come in and just twiddle with the numbers a little bit. You can, have, the peace of mind to know that, when you add money or subtract money from a bank account, it's going to be what it was before. So,
and, you think about keeping all your passwords on a Microsoft Word document, and you can easily
terrible idea.
You can easily backspace and edit all that.
Yeah.
And in a blockchain, you can't go edit a chain. You can add to it.
Correct.
Right? But you couldn't go back and change a number. Yeah.
You can't go back and change something that happened in the past. What you would do in a blockchain world is, say you had a value there that, your bank account had $1,000 in it. At that point, it's more of a summation of all the history that had happened to that point.
Yep.
And then you would add a positive or negative entry to that to kind of affect your bank account.
And what makes it that secure?
It is the way that the systems work, where it's a bunch of computers coming to a consensus or doing math to kind of prove that that transaction did what it said it was supposed to do. And they call them confirmations in a lot of cases, where, a block, from the word blockchain, is you think of it as a subset of time. Some blockchains that measured in minutes, some that are measured in seconds, some are even down to, under a second. But it's a block of time. And during that block of time, all the different things that happen get collected. The computers agree upon that, do the quote unquote math on that. And then they give it like a fingerprint of sorts for that block. That's called a hash, but it gets hashed and then it moves on to the next one. And then that hash is referenced in the following one to kind of help you if you wanted to kind of step back in time.
So there's different databases that are doing this for different purposes. So you'd have one for the DMV or you could have one for real estate. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. In the past, the best known blockchain obviously is Bitcoin. Its system was not focused on any particular use case. It was more of like, in some ways, a proof of concept for digital money is where the idea grew out of, during the financial crisis. And so supposedly came out of the financial crisis, and the idea that it's, the fat Wall Street banks were getting all the things they shouldn't be getting.
Right. So
you have a world where, the technology's evolved. It's been roughly around 14 years at this point. The Bitcoin was by itself for a while, then XRP came, then Ethereum was really in 2017 came along and allowed smart contracts. And smart contracts, we'll get to in a few minutes here, but like it really changed what a blockchain could do in a positive way, kind of created a much bigger expanse of surface for applications.
And who are the creators of these databases? Is this Microsoft, Google, Amazon?
Almost never. They may be piloting projects. Mm-hmm. It could be a software developer in their basement. It could be, typically they've had a lot of math education, cryptography kind of mixed in with that math, and just ways because early on the problem they were trying to solve is not we know how to do a blockchain, but how do we make it where it can have more transactions per second, the throughput of it.
Yeah.
Or they're trying to solve for a use case like you're talking about, like, okay, we want it to store car titles. That's probably just happening today. Right. That hasn't happened too much in the past, but there's special use cases that need to be solved for on each one of those. That will, not to say every use case in the world needs a unique blockchain, but at some level it needs to have flexibility to be able to do different things.
So we kind of have the basis of how this is built. So now let's get to our topic. How does this change the world?
Yeah, very simply said, in a lot of different ways. And, this topic comes up frequently when I talk to, people about crypto. They're like, oh, how is, isn't blockchain and crypto all we already know it is? And I'm like, to me, no. We're like, this is barely the tip of the iceberg that we're seeing here. And the analogy that I've been using lately is to kind of help people understand the reference in time is, I don't know if you've seen this, but back in I think in 95, 96, the Today Show was talking about email addresses. And Katie Couric was on there, Matt
video,
Lord.
Yeah.
And they spent a minute or two discussing like what we understand to be an email address today, the @ sign, right? And they're like the A with a circle around it. I don't even know how to say that. Like, it's just that awkward stage, right?
Yeah.
And they were even, when they were explaining what an email address was, they were leaving the periods out. Like, so, obviously a learning curve there. And that's the moment I feel like we're in crypto. Because when I talk to people about crypto, there's just all this confusion. Maybe a smidge here or there they understand, but for the most part, people don't. And to me, that feels like a decent analogy. But, that's... I couple that with saying we believe we know what blockchain/crypto will do for the finance world, but we likely don't even know a majority of the use cases it likely could solve down the road. Those will be uncovered as the next generation comes along of the technology,
right,
and that kind of stuff. So, it's it's an ever evolving space. It's certainly, over the last 2.5, 3 years, it has felt like the pace of change has extremely advanced, increased in how fast things are getting solved. There was more teams doing projects. I was telling something the other day, summer of 21, I felt like I could keep up with all of the crypto news that was happening on a daily basis for all intents and purposes. Not a chance anymore. Like even 6 months after that, I couldn't do that. Like now that's why I have certain markets I focus on. And, for gaming, for instance, I don't pay attention to it at all, but I know there's a lot happening there.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
So starting with that cryptocurrency,
mm-hmm.
Obviously that is built on blockchain.
Yeah. And that
was
is
that the original use for blockchain, right? Is that
that's the digital e-money that Bitcoin grew out of. And I think early on they quickly, whether they admit it or not, realized that it was not going to be an e-money replacement just due to the restriction on how many transactions can happen in a particular block or on a per second basis. So, that's why other blockchains have come along that have been much more efficient at doing what they do that allow maybe for an e-money replacement type thing. So,
yeah.
But, in the notes here, we talked briefly about what I kind of been discussing more recently with people is an anything to anything transaction. People are like, first, they don't really understand how to wrap their head around that. People understand, like, I take my dollars and I go and I buy groceries at the grocery store. Very simple. It's dollars to give me goods. In a world where, cryptocurrency is more prevalent, you could potentially not be holding dollars. You could be holding Casey coins, and you want to go buy stuff at the grocery store. I have Robert coins, and I want to buy stuff at the grocery store, but the grocery store doesn't want either one of our coins. In a cryptocurrency world, there would be liquid markets for Casey coins into something that they would care about, and vice versa. And you end up where it all can be happening behind the scenes. So you don't even have to care what they want, and they don't care what you have. And you just go and you just pay. It starts getting to a world where I think it makes sense to say people that live in Europe, where they're always going across borders. Americans, we're kind of spoiled in the sense that we don't really deal with other currencies all that much.
Right.
But you start getting into a world where it's anything. Your son may earn some kind of tokens in a video game he's playing, but he wants to go to buy something at the gas station. In that kind of world, that thing could exist. So anything to anything, I think cryptocurrency kind of allows amongst many other things.
So, what I'm interested in is, and it takes government involvement, but removing the middleman from transactions.
Mm-hmm.
The middlemen also collect fees, right?
Yeah, typically high fees. Yeah.
So this could be very promising.
Yes. The example I think that we can talk about here is if you're buying a house, you have an escrow agent, or, you have a title insurance. The attorneys make a lot of money off of title insurance.
Right.
In a blockchain world where the house deed is recorded on a blockchain electronically, and your funds could, whether they're on the blockchain or they could be represented on the blockchain, kind of tying technology together allows a transaction to come together. The only reason why you're buying title insurance is the off chance that the person selling the house doesn't really own it or have rights to own it, sell it.
Correct.
So, that's 1% sometimes. I have no idea what it is these days.
It'd have to be a small percentage, you would think.
Yeah, but still thousands of dollars typically on a house transaction that you kind of don't need to be paying, in my opinion. So if you could, on a blockchain, prove that you own the house that you're selling, or you have your name's on the deed effectively, you don't need, with finality and 100% certainty, what job does the attorney have there? Probably nothing. Right. So you could have a transaction set up with a smart contract saying, okay, Robert's got his money, you've got your house deed. Yep. Let's do this transaction. It checks all of it as part of the code, and it basically gives us each what we're due at the end of that transaction. So,
so you can apply that to
car titles, house deeds, anything where there's a middleman, like there's escrow agents just for, sometimes we're doing a transaction, like my wife just bought a horse. In the horse world, it's kind of like pay me for the horse when the hauler picks it up. Well, that's harder to do than said, right?
Right.
Because typically they don't want wires because, I don't know, they're probably trying to keep the money off the IRS radar.
Right.
So, I think that we eventually get to a world where that's more electronic, but, do we trust the person? Like an escrow agent would make sense, I think, in that scenario. There's not really, I'm sure there's escrow agents for horse sales, but they're not all that common as far as I can tell.
Sure.
So it's a world that's, blockchain is in an interesting place in time because it is a technology that helps you replace the need for trust in a transaction. This world has less and less trust each day, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But the technology comes along and allows you to have the requirement for zero trust as long as you trust in the system. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. What's the incentive for governments and other organizations to allow that to happen, though? Typically government only makes changes if they screwed something up.
They screwed something up, or they're lobbied for. So you have that side of it too.
That's true.
I would imagine that the change, certainly there probably some laws that need to change around, say, escrow or title insurance and that kind of stuff.
Right.
But I think that would probably be more of a bottom up type thing. somebody needs it. It happens in one state, it starts snowballs into other states, and maybe it comes.
Well,
federal.
some states don't even have closing attorneys.
Correct.
I think Montana is one of those. We helped the client purchase a home out there and just work with a transfer company.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I could see in that space that being much more efficient, and maybe groups like that pushing it.
Because everyone in Montana is honest. Is that what that's saying?
Yes. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I assume nobody's honest.
Yeah. That's probably the safe assumption.
So tell me about, we talked about this in podcast probably over a year ago, but maybe 2 now, but think about like food inventory or food safety.
Yep.
Like, we had the whole lettuce scare a few years ago. So if all that was in blockchain, we would know exactly where the lettuce came from.
Yeah. I mean, potentially down to the row in the field. Yeah. There's certainly.
Would we know who bought it? We wouldn't know who bought it. We would know which grocery store had it though, right?
In the world that we currently live in, we probably would not know who bought it, but there could be a world not too far from that they know an identity, and it doesn't necessarily have to be your name, but they know an identity that bought that lettuce from, that supplier from that row in the field.
Yeah.
So they could, warn you that you bought something with salmonella or whatever that's on the lettuce. I'm really intrigued by this not because we need to more efficiently tell the people that have the lettuce that there's a problem, but more so not waste as much food because we're trying to, because we understand the blast radius of the problem.
Right.
Because typically it's, okay, we know there's salmonella. Okay, we need to get rid of all lettuce in the Southeast. Probably not the right answer.
Right. But right now, they know where the problem came from, but we couldn't figure that out to specifically. We just assume the whole batch is bad now.
Correct.
Where we could actually potentially not have to eliminate all the food source.
Right. I haven't followed this lettuce one as closely, I'll admit, but it's just generally, it's a very big hammer that they go to solve this problem with.
Yeah. Well,
and it can be right, but it could be a more precise hammer if data was more easily tracked and, shared amongst people. Because it's one thing for, say, the growers to track it, but are they sharing that data with the shippers, and then they sharing that with the grocery stores? Basically zero chance.
Yeah.
In a world where a blockchain is public and they're all kind of contributing to that data along the way, it's easier to kind of do that traceability. And it may be that, Kroger doesn't care about telling their customers, but maybe Whole Foods does, or something like that, right? Where there's some stores that pick up on that data and do something because they have your identity and the other one doesn't.
Is all blockchain public? There could be private blockchain.
There are private, they call them private permission blockchains, but yes, private blockchains. You can literally run Bitcoin by yourself in your own house. Obviously it's worth zero.
Right.
It's functionally not Bitcoin, it's using the same code, but for all intents and purposes, they're public.
So this is a big one. It would solve a lot of problems. Digital voting.
Yes.
And so there would be no voting fraud. It'd be more complicated voting fraud.
It would be more complicated voting fraud.
And everyone has to have a device to be able to vote.
Right. And we're getting close to that where all generations have some kind of technology. We're probably not quite there yet, admittedly, but we're close. And I even think that if we, say tomorrow we decided as a country we want to have electronic voting, there could be some allowances because there's people with disabilities that it probably would have trouble.
Unless you could vote into the blockchain from a device that's portable or, I don't know, ADA compliant or whatever the words are there. But it's, I'm intrigued by this because, partially I think I don't like staying up late on election night to figure out who wins, right?
But I want to know,
right? Lately, it's taken a few days.
Yes, right. But in a blockchain world, to me, let me tongue tied here. Let me back up a little bit. I think that they try to do all these things to prevent influence when you're voting, right? At certain times, you can't have people there with signs so close to the voting polls, those kind of things. I also think that there's influence with the East Coast starts voting, and then the West Coast kind of gets to see it. In Hawaii and Alaska, in some ways, we don't even really care if they count.
Right.
But like they're the extreme examples. Like in a blockchain enabled voting system, it could all be recorded digitally on the blockchain. Nobody could see the results, and it could be programmed to be like, okay, it is now 1 a.m. Eastern because now we know the polls are closed in all places.
Yeah.
Show all the results. Oh my gosh, it's 1:05. We know the results. Everybody can go to bed. That is not good for TV revenue,
right?
Or TV ad revenue for those networks,
right?
They can still have their talking heads, I'm sure, but like it's
well, you still poll people coming out of the polls, I guess, and do all that.
But that's immediately we have found that is not statistically accurate.
Well, none of it's statistically accurate in recent history.
Yes.
Yeah. The pollsters have gotten it wrong almost every time.
Yeah. But to me, both sides complain about the election in some form, right? And they're complaining about different things too. It seems like as a country, we would want an election that nobody complains about within reason, right? There's always gonna be somebody complaining about small things, but like,
yeah.
But they keep saying, "Oh, it should be a national holiday to vote." Well, it could be, or it could. We don't necessarily need a holiday. You need to vote from your phone.
Yeah,
like
there's a lot of ways you could modernize that. Unfortunately, both sides would complain about something, and it probably would never happen. But if you were starting a new country,
yeah, because that happens frequently. Yeah,
and you had the resources. This definitely seems to make sense, and it doesn't mean that you have to do it for a presidential election. You could start doing it. There are plenty of small towns across this country that would be, I'm sure, really anxious to implement something like this and to be the first.
Yeah, and I think that's where it starts. It starts at the bottom and goes up. It's not like, oh my gosh, we just wake up and say the next presidential election is going to be on blockchain.
Right. But yeah, for your town mayor or something not connected to a major election.
Or it doesn't even have to be politics. It could be like voting for, I don't know, something within a community. Yeah, like it could start there and then prove itself to go to, say, a mayor race or something like that.
You could choose. You could choose like the concert series on the square. You could choose who you want to show up each week, and then
Yeah, that's funny. So,
but something like that'd be a great testing ground because you could use the technology, and then if it didn't work, who cares if you got the Mexican band and you got Jimmy Buffett instead, or whatever.
It's a challenge with this digital voting outside of a small community race that doesn't necessarily need an identity is identities being on the blockchain. Yeah. It can't just be like I have an email address and a password and I log in to vote because that is ripe for a whole different set of fraud.
Correct.
I think we first need to get to where we have digital versions of our IDs. We're getting closer in some states, Georgia being one of them. You can have your driver's license now on an iPhone.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I didn't know that. Arizona was the first one.
I think we're like Georgia being the first 8 or something like that.
Oh,
Arizona.
I'm going to do that right after this podcast.
So it's a multi-step process.
How many times I forget my driver's license?
Well, here I'm about to give you some.
Is that too soon?
Potentially. So you can put it in your Apple Wallet. It shows there after they mail you a piece of paper to verify your identity. Okay. They're trying to prevent a problem there.
Right.
But it's only good at the airport.
Well, that's when I need it the most.
Okay. So then you're set.
I have Clear. So I technically I don't need it at any Clear airport, but it's only good at the Atlanta airport.
Right.
Oh.
No. Well, you may get to another airport that doesn't have Clear, so you got to be careful there too.
Well, no. What I'm saying is I was just in Allentown, Pennsylvania. If I'm in Allentown, Pennsylvania, I show my ID on my driver's license. Is it still good there?
I'm pretty sure it is because the new IDs that are federally backed that have the star on it, I believe, are all part of that same system. Okay. And this is Georgia had to each state has to pass a law to enact this.
The big thing is if you get pulled over, you don't have a driver's license. That's not going to work.
Exactly. I mean, because it will show your photo. You have to kind of go deeper into the wallet. It shows all the same data and actually a little bit more. Okay, I believe, but it's just different, right? I mean, I look forward to the day that I don't have to carry my driver's license with me and it's just in my phone because my phone is going to be with me,
right?
And it's one less thing to have in my wallet. Yeah. So, but we're getting close. But it is. So identities are on some kind of electronic form of a database. It's almost certainly not a blockchain at this point. So how do we get it to where they're on a blockchain? Then you have privacy aspects that you really need to care about at that point.
Correct.
Because I believe we talked about in this podcast, in a blockchain enabled world, you should be able to go somewhere and if they, say you're a restaurant and they want to know if you're 21, They look at your ID. They're also seeing your home address. They're seeing your height, your weight, a bunch of other potentially other private data that they certainly don't need.
Right.
There's ways in blockchain, they call it zero knowledge proofs, where they functionally could have their system ask, is Casey 21? And his wallet and his ID would respond yes or no. They don't need to know that you're 21 or if you're 70. It doesn't matter. You're of age.
That sounds like something would get hacked by people and
right, but it can be done
by the user, so they could be 21.
Well, I mean, if your ID that is sponsored on this blockchain by, and I guess
That's
endorsed
true.
by the state, I mean, there's ways to kind of get around the potential for, I guess, editing or fraud there.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
yeah, there's a lot of layers to this, but I think having identities on a blockchain really starts to unlock a lot of use cases that we're going to be talking about here. So
we already covered a bit this a little bit ago, but basically titles, deeds, and ownership tracking.
Yeah.
That makes total sense.
I mean, it's, we were just talking about horses earlier. Horses have titles too.
Yeah, that's
right.
right.
I mean, so
that's right.
That could be on a blockchain.
And even being able to like verify prior ownership for a transaction.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's, you can go on, say you're looking at a car, you go on Carfax and see that, oh, this is a 3 owner. You don't know who the other owners are. Not necessarily care who they are, but maybe you care about what states that car's been in.
Yeah, true.
I mean,
maybe. Yeah. I
mean, you may not want a car that's been in the Northeast.
Yeah. As you know, I'm in the horse world too. Or my daughter is. We had a horse that was purchased that when it got registered to participate in the professional events, the ownership was not correct. Like basically there were 3 bill of sales missing. There was a bill of sale from them to us, but not prior to that. And so in order to run FEI in the sport, you have to have, it's like a title search for a house. You have to show that you have all the titles going all the way back.
Right.
Well, what happened was 3 people were angry at each other. And so they were like, the horse is basically repossessed at some point in its life. And then we come along and buy this repossessed horse, which was a great horse.
Yeah.
And so basically,
is that like a salvage title on a car?
Thankfully, my daughter's cute. So I was like, here's this little girl. She wants to do her dream. And because you 3 can't get along,
right,
she can no longer move up in the ranks. And so they all signed and we fixed it.
Yeah.
But I was wondering why he was so cheap. I was like, why is this horse discounted so much? It's because the person who owned him knew that, but didn't tell us.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until we moved up the ranks, we figured out that, that's why.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, I know. Right. So blockchain would have solved all that because it would have known.
Right. Well,
it wouldn't be able to complete the loop.
Exactly.
Right?
And you that would have been visible. Right.
Yeah.
Versus kind of being a surprise. So,
right. Exactly. Create verifiable portable data mechanisms. Explain.
Yeah. Mouthful. So as long as I can remember the internet being around, they've always had this grand idea that healthcare data would be portable. So going from doctor's office to doctor's office, you're having to have them send the data back and forth. And I don't know. I can't imagine they're faxing it these days. They're probably just emailing PDFs or something silly. But
they have these portals now.
Right, which is helpful. But I can't imagine all portals are talking to each other.
Or even doctors review the portals, but that's a different problem.
Right. Yeah, true. But just having data that is portable, that is on the blockchain, that is private, but yet can be detailed enough for the people that need to see it. So this is a slightly different problem than we were talking about before. You want privacy to the data, but you want certain people that you verify or select to be able to see the data in whatever, I guess amounts, whether it's full access or partial access.
Yeah.
Healthcare is the easy example. The education records, I think, is another thing as families move around.
Oh, yeah.
This is a bit of a hot topic in general, but like if you move across states, you could be getting different kinds of educations. Like, do the quote unquote credits transfer or classes transfer, all that kind of stuff. So you can make that more portable. And I guess just, when, in my opinion, when information can move more freely, this is what the internet did. It opened up so many use cases. And this is kind of the borderline of we don't quite know what blockchain could do, but if we unlock that part, you could end up with a flood of other possibilities that could, or that are unimaginable right now. So,
is that kind of goes along with markets being created around things that aren't easily sold today. So,
correct.
I think. Well, I mean, you have concerts, sporting event tickets.
Yeah, and
we're starting to. I mean, it's not blockchain, but we're starting to do that now. Like we go to the Braves game. If there's a noon game, which is for a year, usually we go as a team.
Yep.
And this year I couldn't take a snapshot
Yes.
of the ticket and pass it to everyone on their phones
because now it moves and does all this.
Yeah, it has like this moving bar, and there were so many people in line that had pictures of their tickets, and they're like, "I'm sorry, we can't take that." That's so I don't know what kind of fraud they're dealing with to have to move to that, but the blockchain could definitely solve it. Probably through an app of some sort.
Yes, I mean, my understanding of at least the ticket situation you're referring to is somebody goes in with an electronic ticket and then screenshots it and then sends it to their buddy outside trying to reuse the ticket.
Gotcha.
Even
I still have a criminal mind.
Yeah. Check.
I would assume that once it's scanned, it says, "Hey, I've been used."
Yeah.
And you can't exit and re-enter, so you think that would just solve the problem right there, but evidently not.
But with it being able to be moved, you potentially could exit and remove if they wanted to allow that.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Versus, just allowing somebody to have a screenshot.
Right.
But, there are obviously marketplaces around tickets, Ticketmaster, StubHub, those kind of things.
Yeah.
But they are high fees, and they are they're the master of their little kingdoms. Yeah. And you're kind of up to their rules. But what if I wanted to sell you my Braves tickets and transfer them? I mean, I can hand you cash, or we could do something outside the system, and then I can, at least in the Braves ticket example, I know that we can come in and we can transfer them within the app.
Right.
But it's not truly portable, right? Making them more portable, making it where, again, we could do an anything to anything transaction. I want Braves tickets.
Yeah.
And you have, Casey coins, but I don't want Casey coins. So.
Well, that comes back down to, and we don't have it on our list, I don't think. Well, we did, maybe the top, but contracts. It comes back to the contract too, right?
Smart contracts,
You could work compensation into the blockchain, right?
Right.
Good was, or you executed your deal. I paid. Check.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, smart contracts can be anything that code can functionally be written for.
Yeah. Is there any one place now you can do a smart contract?
Yeah. I mean, Ethereum that's basically all Ethereum is.
So you and I could probably figure out how to do a smart contract, but what about me and a 70-year-old man?
Do you mean writing a smart contract?
Right. Yeah. And executing who's not technically savvy. Probably not.
Probably not. There may be some kind of website out there with like a GUI that you can go in and drag and drop things.
Yeah.
Again, maybe not. But we need to get there. This is early days still.
Yeah, exactly. They probably think you're trying to pull something.
And I think at the end of the day, if we fast forward, it's not like you and I or a 70-year-old is going to need to know how to write a smart contract.
Yeah,
it's going to be
executing one.
Right, but it's going to be so simple where you could be in some kind of website or interface where you're just basically saying, you're basically, again, dragging and dropping, this is this half the deal, that's this half the deal. These are the conditions, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And run, click a button. And
we should develop that. I could totally see the use for that.
Yeah. And I mean, to me, that world is coming. It's just regulations is part of it, not to drag regulations in on this again, but it's, crypto only can do so much right now without.
But think about that on top of like Venmo. So you already have the money payment platform. Why not add an agreement?
Well, Venmo, I would say, is a siloed payment provider. So you're requiring us both to have Venmo accounts.
Yeah, true. I figured you'd have to have some type of account regardless.
But potentially, but you have a wallet that maybe you don't want to keep at PayPal because you don't trust them.
Oh, true.
Which probably shouldn't trust PayPal.
So you need to be able to attach a third party.
Right. Or you could have your own literally self-custody wallet that you attach to a transaction.
Yeah.
Or it could be your bank account.
So PayPal could be the first, I guess.
They could.
More than Venmo.
Heck, just a couple of weeks ago, they announced they're working on a PayPal stablecoin that's going to be US dollar backed by Paxos, I think. And everyone trumpets them as being really forward thinking. I'm like, but that already exists.
Right. But not at PayPal.
Right. Yes.
And not
good
with
marketing.
Not with the email campaigns that
Yeah.
PayPal has. I think I get an email from them every day.
That, and PayPal obviously has deep regulatory roots where they, like, even the New York Financial Services Department came out and endorsed it, but also wasn't endorsing some cryptos that were even XRP that has clarity from the courts. I'm like, this is such a zoo. So anyways.
So tell me about ad-free tracking.
Yeah, this is interesting to me. So you can use different browsers on your computers, your phones. If you have an iPhone, you probably have Safari, you might have Chrome,
right?
Or Internet Explorer if you're on a PC. There's Firefox as well. There's a version of Chrome that Google does not make, but since it's open source, this group has taken, they call it Brave, is the browser. It works just like Chrome, but it has privacy blocking stuff in it. So you don't have all the tracking that happens normally.
Is that like DuckDuckGo?
DuckDuckGo is a search engine that actually they do plug Brave into.
Oh, okay.
But it's a browser that is privacy focused and blockchain enabled, if you want to call it that. It prevents all the tracking stuff, pixel tracking, all that kind of where your identity or your patterns get sold off.
Yeah.
Without your, really saying yes or no. In a world where everybody was using a browser that was enabled, and it didn't have to be Brave, but say all the browsers were crypto enabled, you could have a small wallet attached to it. And when you went to go read an article, instead of seeing ads or feeling like your identity is being stolen / sold out from underneath you, you're paying fractions of a penny per second, effectively, to read an article. You read as much as you want, and then you leave, and that transaction's done.
So you're paying the ad revenue they would have gotten.
Right. I mean, obviously, it's not like all of a sudden the internet needs to be free, because that's just not a thing.
Right.
But it's a replacement, because if you're not paying for something, you are the product, whether people really process it that way or not.
Right.
And it's not like it has to be super expensive. Like all those paywalls you may run into, like, oh, I want to go read this article and I'm also on some random website and they show me the first paragraph. I'm like, thanks, but I'm not going to pay you your $1 for the month to read this thing. There's not that much content there on this article for me. So there are some websites, not tons, that are supporting this whole, they detect that you have a blockchain enabled browser. They can tell a wallet's there and all of a sudden you can see the whole article. You scroll. If you get to the bottom, you've paid for whatever however long it took you to read.
Right.
So maybe fast readers get a deal, and you kind of get to move on, and you don't become a product being sold. So,
yeah, that's most of the stuff you see on the internet at the bottom of the article you're reading, and all the pictures and the crazy clickbait. Yes. That's exactly what that is. You're the product.
Absolutely, and I think that this is an example of blockchain being used and people never realizing they're using blockchain. Because you could, if the world evolves and a lot of people are doing it, like I know that I'm doing it now because I can't put US dollars in there and pay with US dollars.
Okay.
You put crypto in there, in whatever crypto you can hold, it automatically transfers it to the crypto they want to receive. Super simple. It's that anything to anything type transaction.
Right.
The cool thing though is with crypto, it's more than 2 decimal places deep. They're mostly like 6, 8, 10 decimal places deep. So they can do super small fractions, which make this work. And you're not paying the fees to Visa and MasterCard and Discover, which basically means the transaction can be no less than $1 or people are losing money.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of roughly the break even. And, in a blockchain world, they can be fractions of a penny. So,
last point for how blockchain will change the world, combat corruption and government spending.
Yeah. And when I made these notes,
don't you need all parties to be okay with that?
Yeah. I probably should have spent in any kind of spending, whether it's nonprofits, anything like that. But, with things on a blockchain, it's transparent. You can kind of see what's happening. You may not have all the details because if something goes off chain, obviously it's not there. But, when I was making these notes, I was reading about the Ukraine stuff. And I know that's a super hot topic about money going to Ukraine. Is it being spent wisely?
Right.
Even from that standpoint, or is it, where's it going after that? But the ability to see as a citizen where the money's going, I think promotes trust. And obviously there's less and less of that each day, but like there's something the government could do. And again, it's not like the government's going to immediately put all their transactions through a blockchain. It may start in a small pocket, national parks, or who knows what it's going to start with. But it seems like it will end up there. And, there could be groups that advocate for or against different kinds of spending. The whole RFP process to work with a government agency to do something that they need done is already a relatively public process. Is it free of corruption? Probably not.
Right. So
there's other layers there that I think this can help kind of start to tackle. So,
Robert, thanks for your insight on this. Certainly, from an investment standpoint, there's limited ways to access this, but I think that as companies surface, this is something that indexers like me will grab this very differently.
Yeah.
Not in any one specific company,
Yeah,
but
totally.
But there's definitely a big future here, and that's why we do these crypto special edition podcasts is because I just want to help educate people about what's coming down. Mm-hmm. What's coming down the pike, right? Yeah. I mean, recently we just remodeled our basement, and I took out a ton of DVDs. I don't watch movies over and over again, so I love this digital age of just rent it for $3.99, and I'm just done, and it's out.
Yep.
But when our kids were little, we have DVDs for the car, which you don't have to do that anymore,
right? Yeah. I mean,
but as I was hauling it all to Goodwill, thinking to myself, I remember when we bought all these, thinking that how we don't have VHS anymore, right? Mm-hmm. So we went from VHS to DVD. Then we have a few Blu-rays, but our kids were getting older then, and we started streaming things more, and so Blu-ray just went.
Yeah, Blu-ray was very short-lived. Yes, but it's a technology waves, in my opinion, are accelerating in how fast they happen. So it does maybe make sense that Blu-ray was quicker. I think it kind of got caught between obviously DVD and streaming for sure.
Yeah. So. And then streaming, and then even with streaming, we were streaming, but now we're streaming in 4K.
Right.
So it's moving so fast. And for people to say, oh, this crypto stuff is fake. It's someone says it's a Ponzi scheme who doesn't know the true definition of a Ponzi scheme.
Yes, exactly.
but it's definitely something coming down, and you have to be able to open your mind up and learn about this. We have a few episodes you might be interested in. Episode 172, tips to secure your password in cryptocurrency assets. I think that's even more important now than ever. Mm-hmm. Smart people who do bad things seem to be in plethora these days. Yep. We did have a special recently, XRP gets clarity. You might want to listen in on that one. That's just more of some of the government rulings that have come down with XRP. But yeah, Robert, if they want to reach out to you directly, how would they reach out to you?
Just shoot me an email, robert@tetoncryptocapital.com.
And we'll make sure we add that to our show notes. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're interested in learning more about Wiser Wealth Management or Teton Crypto Capital, you can schedule a consultation with one of our fiduciary financial advisors or directly with Robert. You can do that at wiserinvestor.com. Thanks for listening, and Robert, we'll see you next time.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to a Wiser Retirement podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening. That way you don't miss any new episodes. We'd also appreciate if you could leave a rating and review. If you have any questions about anything that was discussed today, head to wiserinvestor.com and reach out. This episode was produced and edited by Ken Hoadley. This podcast is strictly for informational purposes only and is not to be considered as investment advice or a solicitation to buy or sell any financial products, securities, digital assets, or any other investment vehicles, or a basis to make any financial decisions. Wiser Wealth Management Incorporated is a registered investment advisor with the SEC. The host and/or guest may personally own securities, digital assets, or other investment vehicles mentioned on this podcast. Neither the host nor guest of the show are compensated for their participation, and no referral fees are paid to or received by any host or guest for clients, listeners, or similar interests. Investments involve risk, and unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Be sure to first consult with a qualified financial advisor, tax professional, insurance professional, and/or legal professional before implementing any strategy discussed herein. Past performance is not indicative of future performance.